Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast. I've got a very special guest today. I've got Mr. Trent Murphy. Trent is one bad to the bone defensive end in the NFL. Well, I'm sorry, recently retired from the NFL. Trent was the 2013 NCAA sack leader, and he retired from the Buffalo Bills. Recently, Trent went to Denver to get some traditional archery coaching from Mr. Tom Clum, my personal recurve coach. So he started talking back and forth about how that coaching went, everything that he learned, the new direction that set him in. And so I just wanted to have him on the podcast and talk about his start in hunting, his journey in hunting, taking that step and going into traditional archery, what that looks like for him. It's a really fun episode. Here's the best part about it all. When I asked Trent about his start in hunting, what got him into hunting, he actually had a doctor on one of the teams that he was playing for tell him that he needed to start eating wild game. So cool. Really cool to hear a doctor say you need to start eating wild game. And so Trent just said, I went into the woods and tried to kill deer. I just started walking through the woods trying to kill deer. It's so cool to hear somebody say, I started hunting because I needed wild game. Guys, it's a really fun episode. We talk about Trent's journey into hunting. We talk about Trent's taking the next step into shooting a recurve. We talk about some of Trent's favorite quarterbacks that he got to sack, some of his least favorite quarterbacks that he got to sack. We also talk about the importance of getting people involved in hunting, getting people in the outdoors, and getting people introduced to our way of life. And not only just people, but we talk about kind of his passion for getting NFL guys, for getting guys who have lost their identity in sports, for getting guys who have, they're battling injuries, they're battling hardships, they're battling, career-ending injuries and not knowing what the future looks like and what it could do for those guys to get them in the outdoors. Guys, it's a really fun episode. Trent's an awesome guy. I love hearing the journey that Trent has been on. I love hearing from start to where he's at now. I think a lot of people can relate to it. I think a lot of people can be inspired by it. So guys, I hope you enjoy the episode. As always, this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at ScentLock.
With over 90 years of innovation, Bear Archery continues pushing toward the goal of founder Fred Bear, making archery accessible for all. Fred believed the history of the bow and arrow were the history of mankind, and everyone should immerse themselves in the outdoor experience. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast, where the mission is simple: to hunt, grow, and inspire others.
Guys, if you have been around archery much at all, then you've probably heard the name Lancaster. And for good reason. Lancaster Archery is well known worldwide, and they have an incredible reputation worldwide. Why? Because they're archery experts on all things archery, from bow hunting to 3D shooting, from recurves to compounds. If it's archery, they not only sell the products, but they know the products. Guys, Lancaster is your one-stop shop for all things bear archery, every compound, recurve, all the equipment. But outside of bear, they have everything you need, from arrows and broadheads to bow building equipment, everything. Guys, Lancaster Archery is a name that you can absolutely trust. They put out some of the best information that you can find just about anywhere. So I would highly encourage you to not only shop at lancasterarchery.com because you can trust in the products you're buying because they know about the products that you're buying, but also I would highly encourage you to check out all of their resources, not only on their website, but on their YouTube channel, because they are a wealth of knowledge on all things archery. So guys, check out Lancaster Archery. They're your one-stop shop, not only for all of the equipment that you could ever possibly need that's archery related, but also all of the information that you would ever need that is archery related. LancasterArchery.com. Go check them out. So Trent, before we get into the kind of the meat of all this, walk me through kind of your start into hunting, man. I mean, were you born and raised in it? Were you, taught as a kid, or is it more of an adult, acquired thing?
I'll probably say it's definitely more of an adult acquired thing. I mean, I went elk hunting with my dad growing up when I was young and in grade school once, and we grew up clay pigeon shooting in the desert and target shooting, and shot a couple rabbits in the desert and stuff growing up. But it was kind of one of those things where, like, if you're gonna kill it, you're gonna skin it and eat it. And so I learned that lesson from an early age, and that kind of part of hunter ethics and not letting anything go to waste. But there was really, once I started playing football in high school and then kind of going on after that, like there was this big lull. And then my second year probably in the NFL, after I just finished my rookie season, it just felt like I had like Lyme's disease and mono and everything combined. I had like no energy. So I started meeting with some coaches and doctors, and met with a coach, Olympic strength coach named Charles Poliquin, and he had this fat caliper test. And kind of long story short, he did all this stuff, and he had this testing protocol where basically, like, where you're storing fat, he could figure out what was wrong with you. And for me, he was saying like, oh, you're holding xenoestrogen in the back of your legs, like your problem is toxics and plastins, and you're under recovered and overworked, and you're not recovering, and you need to change your whole life and flip it over upside down. And it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually, after you make these kind of better choices and re-educate yourself, like, you're going to start feeling better. And part of that puzzle piece was really where I was sourcing my food and protein. And he was like, go get wild game. Like, don't get conventional meat from the store. Like, that's no good for you, and blah, blah, blah. And so for me, it was just kind of like a light bulb moment of like, man, I love camping and being outdoors and hiking, and I grew up doing it. And now I have this fall off, or well, I didn't have fall off, but I was like, I'm going to go do the Matthews Bows for Pros thing when they were still doing it at the time, and got a bow and took it to like Dick's Sporting Goods and got it set up, and just started kind of beat bopping through the public lands of Virginia trying to get me my first white-tailed deer out east. And I just kept making, one mistake after another and learning, and just kind of like, I mean, after hours and hours of driving and limping through the woods, because I had just had knee surgery, I finally like had an opportunity at a big Virginia buck and ended up missing right under his belly, and learned an important lesson about range finding, all the possible trees and scenarios where he could come in, everything like that. And it was like something about just like missing that buck after all that work I put in. It like got me hook, line, and sinker, and kind of the rest is history after that. And that was probably 2016. And so it's been like a deep dive into it since then. But then I ended up getting a doe finally. And I ate probably only that deer for like 6 days or a week straight. And then I was like, all right, I'm feeling good, but I'm kind of tired of deer. So I'm going to go get Chipotle. And like, I loved Chipotle at the time. Like, we lived off of it. It was like the easiest post-practice meal of all time. And then, but like after I had Chipotle, like got my normal order, like my stomach just was like churning and felt sick. And it almost felt like I'd ate McDonald's or some kind of fast food all of a sudden. And I was like, oh man, this was just kind of like a light bulb moment of like, what we think is good sourced, high quality food that, you were eating is like totally not true. Just like the color of meat and cutting it up myself and doing like the whole deep dive. I was just like, it was like a light bulb moment for me. And since then, we probably haven't bought red meat from the grocery store. I mean, everything in our freezer is harvested from the field, and my wife loves it. My family loves it. So it's been enjoyable for me. That's how I got into it a little late.
Dude, that is so cool, man. Like, so many people talk about liking wild game. I mean, we have an entire monthly special on this show called Cook Wild, just teaching you how to cook wild game. But not many people can say like, hey, like this is where I was at, and my doctor said like, I need this.
Yeah.
And that's so cool, dude. Like, because you can quite literally say that wild game saved your career almost. I mean, dude, that is
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I was for sure. It definitely, there's like, you can turn into the bubble boy real quick when you go down that rabbit hole, but like just changed my food, where I was sourcing my food, like toiletry products, deodorants, like kind of all the things that you grow up using, and then you don't think anything different about it. And you can like, we can all process toxins and it's no big deal until we can't. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're forced to do something different. And so I definitely would encourage people to start eating as much clean meat and wild game as they can before really, before those issues ever even come up. But it helps everything: inflammation, how you feel, energy, like your gut.
That's cool, man.
I'm sure but
I'm gonna have to get you some of our Cook Wild apparel out. Mail you some Cook Wild apparel.
Yeah, for sure. Please do.
But my son, it's cool because my son's in preschool, so I pick him up half day, so he doesn't go to school. The older two girls, they got to go to school all day. He gets to come home half day with dad. And I don't know why, like I don't know when it started, but like when I pick him up from school, he's like, "Hey, Dad, you got any deer meat thawed out?" Like every day, and I'm like, "Yeah, we'll go home and cook some, bud." But it's just every day. It's like, "Dad, we got any steaks?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll go home and have some steaks, buddy." So lunchtime for me and him is always deer steaks. We always have deer steaks together. But that's cool, man. Now, so what's become your favorite wild game? Like if you just live off of it, what's your favorite?
Man, it's going to be a real unconventional answer, and I have a unique opportunity through some of my old teammates, but probably one of my favorite things that we keep in our freezer probably all year is Nilgai. It is like all time.
I've heard that.
We probably my last couple of years with the Redskins before they got canceled was Colt McCoy, who's our quarterback at the time, and a dear friend of mine, and he takes probably a handful of us down to a spot on the King Ranch where they're, free range, low fence. They were introduced there in the 1930s, and they traded 100 whitetail for 100 Nilgais. The story goes, those Nilgai just thrive down there, and they're the best. I mean, they're the toughest animal. They're so tough. Their hide is so thick. I have so much respect for them. We've seen so many get up and run away after what should have been like a, fatal shot, like a perfect shot. But they're fun to hunt, and the meat is it's unreal. Like it's super lean, but it doesn't need any fat. And I mean, obviously the younger the animal is, the better. But I spend most days just dreaming about a young Nilgai cow patty melt or something. Like it's just the best. And then probably second to that would be elk. Like can't beat elk meat. I think a lot of guys would argue that, but I don't know. So we keep it pretty diversified in there. I got a mule deer from Utah left over, and got a little elk meat left over, and got to go drive to my buddy's house in PA. He's got the rest of my Nilgai back straps. But
now is Nilgai hard to hunt though? Because it seems like they would just be like walk out and shoot them.
It definitely depends on the weather and how much pressure they've had, but you can't bait them. And like a lot of guys think about Texas and baiting pretty mutually exclusive, but they won't come to corn, to my knowledge, or anything like that. So they're totally like wild and very spooky. I mean, these animals are used to being hunted by tigers, so they're just like constantly moving and constantly on edge. And I'll get a little bit more close encounters with them than some guys, because I'll take my bow and get dropped off and just sit in the brush and get covered in ticks all day. But they're really cool, and they are hard to. It's like the guys that won the most never see one. They'll just drive around, for 5 days and won't have an encounter. And they every once in a while you'll come through a Sendero cut and catch the butt of one or something, and he won't see you coming, and then he won't be spooked. But they typically will see you coming, and then they just start loping away. And I mean, they get into that thick desert brush, and it's like you basically see them and then they're gone. So it can be a tough hunt. I know some guys are doing the thermal hunts now because they're exotic and stuff. And I think hunting them at night is a totally different ball game. That's probably like going to the grocery store more so once you locate them. But they can be a real challenge to hunt, especially if you're after a bull or something special. But it's a blast. There, the first time you see it, you're like, "Holy cow, what is that thing?" It's like, it looks like a dinosaur.
Now that is, and I don't know how much other hunting you do in Texas, but I just think there's a lot of misconceptions about hunting in Texas. Like, and I think it's just because that big commercialized, big ranch, high fence, feeders. There's so many misconceptions of like, oh, you were hunting in a high fence. Like, I remember one year I get back from Texas and somebody's like, oh, you were hunting in a high fence. I'm like, dude, it's a high fence, but it's 150,000 acres. Like, you understand that there's deer inside that high fence that have never been miles from a fence. I mean, it's just, there's just so many misconceptions of like, oh, they walk out and shake the bucket. And I'm like, dude, like, have you ever hunted free range all dad in Texas? Like, it's insane. Like, it's the closest sheep hunt you can get, to an actual sheep hunt. I mean, so there's a lot of misconceptions that go into hunting Texas, that I feel like, if people would just go and experience it, dude, it's like hunting in another country and it's unbelievably fun. There's so many opportunities. You can go from, South Texas hunting javelinas to West Texas hunting elk. I mean, it's just, there's so many opportunities and it's always fun for me, man.
Yeah. I love going to Texas. I mean, every ranch or experience is totally different. Like you said, it's like a different country down there. And especially for late season guys looking for other opportunities. I mean, being able to go somewhere in January or February, or if it's considered an exotic, I mean, even later than that is a cool opportunity to extend the hunting season for sure.
So I'm curious to get into kind of the balance of the NFL career, because I've had one other NFL guy on, and we kind of talked about that. And it's interesting because, he grew up born and raised a hunter. So he was like, when you start that life, it's like, I still got to find time to hunt. But you acquired that life, in the NFL. So how in the crap do you find time to hunt when you are playing in the NFL? Like, that's because the NFL season overlaps with, I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect overlap. So how do you find time to get out in the field?
Yeah, to be honest, I had a couple opportunities to coach after I was done playing, and I basically told them, like, listen, if you guys move the football season to spring, I'll come coach, but I can't. I'm not giving up my fall now that I just got it back. But I had a couple like unique, I guess, opportunities. The first one was when I blew out my knee going into my contract year in Washington. For whatever reason, we had more injuries that year than like ever before. And typically, like, if you're hurt and you're on IR, like, the team and staff and your coaches, they want to see you every day. You're in meetings, you're at practice, you're going to the treatments in the morning, during meet, like all day. It's still an all day affair, but we had so many injuries and so many guys on IR, injured reserve, that they basically got to the point where they were like, listen, if you have a season ending injury and you can get treatment somewhere else, or you can get treatment at home, or you can go, to another team in the DC area and get treatment, like, please do that. Like, we don't have enough staff. We don't have enough hands. We're trying to get back the guys that are going to be at the, coming in the last quarter of the season or something. And so I basically had a free pass to go get treatment wherever I want. Saying I had a unique opportunity up in Buffalo where I just found a really cool special place to live. It was like 100-acre pig farm, 15 minutes from the facility, just south of Orchard Park there. And on the off days, like, they gave me permission to hunt there, and it was just a an older lady living in the house by herself, and she had kids that would come help work the farm that lived local, and ended up getting an e-bike just to cut out a little time. And there was like a cell phone tower on the back of the property where most of the whitetail sign was anyway. And so I just rip home after work and hop on my e-bike and then go pop in a tree stand, or on the off days would spend some time after I'd go in and do our post-game film study and any, rehab and weightlifting and body maintenance stuff. And then I could, spend the rest of the day out in the woods or walking around and just kind of learning and spending time outdoors. And then we talked about Texas after the season, pretty much like when everyone was done, after guys left and went to different teams, we're like, all right, like when everyone's done, we're going to Texas and we're hunting nilgai and whitetail if opportunity presents itself, and hogs or whatever. So we always had that trip to look forward to in the off season, which was awesome. Like just the camaraderie and getting everyone together and hunting. And then during the season, I was able to kind of find a little bit of a balance which might have became a problem because I started to enjoy my time outside of the facility more than I did my time in the facility towards the end a little bit. But I mean, you can definitely do it and find a balance, and especially if you put in some off-season work. Like if you really walk the woods in the winter and set your stands up and have your pinch points and find the rubs and find the scrapes and everything. And all you got to do is, bike out there and hop in a tree and sit still and quiet for a couple hours. Like it was a blast, and I enjoyed it, and I learned a ton. So I had a good time.
It's interesting to me because, well, hunting offers you that perfect, you use the word balance. Hunting offers you that perfect balance from like hectic, chaotic schedule to sitting and just enjoying nature and enjoying the calmness, enjoying, the birds singing and seeing the deer and the sunrises and sunsets. Like it offers the perfect balance. But yet there's still so many people that, and I love it, dude. I love when I hear the whole, yeah, but you get to do it for a living. And I'm like, but it wasn't always like that. Like, I haven't worked in the outdoor industry my entire life, and I've still got kids. I've still got a wife. I've still got, a job that I have to do. So I don't just get to go hunt all day long every day. Cause I just love hearing that excuse. Cause it's like, dude, if you want to hunt, like you'll make it a priority and you'll find time to hunt. Like, and then you talk to dudes in the NFL where like their career revolves around how they perform from September through, January. And it's like, okay, here's these guys that their life literally revolves around that time of year, and they still find time to hunt. And I'm not saying I'm not saying abandon your family and abandon your kids and lose your job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if you make it a priority, you'll find time to do it. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I to be fair, I talk about it as like healing and recovery or this or that, but like I've gotten as much strength from it as I've gotten probably recovery, in the sense that like, I always kind of prided myself in being a tough, gritty player. And I feel like the days you don't want to wake up or don't want to go sit in the cold or do that, I'm like, man, the animals live out there all the time. Like I just got to be a little tougher and a little grittier and go sit and get uncomfortable or whatever. And the more uncomfortable I am, the more uncomfortable they probably are, and my opportunities go up. Or sometimes I'll, be stuffed in those team flights and headed to a West Coast game or something and uncomfortable and think about pissing and moaning about my knees being crammed in the back of the seat. I'm like, dude, I'm on this plane for 4 hours. Like I've sat in a tree for 15 hours. Like I can sit on this plane for 4 hours for a minute. It's not a big deal. And so I don't know if I've had opportunities where you get uncomfortable, or, you got to be a little bit tougher and grit through something. And then it just is a good reminder too, like, man, it's not that big of a deal. Like I just gotta, be a little tougher and get through this. And I think everybody could use a little bit more of that.
For sure, dude. Speaking of being like gritty and tough, who is your favorite quarterback to just annihilate?
Oh man, there probably my last game I played, I knocked Lamar Jackson out of the game, and that one felt pretty good, just because guys are so afraid to play him just because of his speed and everything. And let's see, Kirk Cousins was our quarterback in Washington, and we always had to stay like 10 feet away from him in practice. So it felt good to see him on an opposing color and actually be able to smack him a couple times.
How can you tackle a guy that nice though? Like
I think you just hit him harder. Philly had a few quarterbacks, but I always loved playing Philly in that kind of little rivalry. I always played well against them, but yeah, I don't know. They're all just another name and color and an opponent in a jersey, so I didn't discriminate too much.
But you do have a favorite. It didn't take you long to say, dude, Smear and Lamar was awesome. That one came to your mind pretty quick.
It was my last play, and they had been messing with me a little bit. So to be able to get active and come alive in a playoff game, and have a guy look at you and be like, "Oh, I'm definitely pulling the ball against this guy," and then show him he shouldn't have pulled the ball against me was pretty rewarding.
That's awesome. That's cool. So what you have developed kind of a love for nilgai. What else has kind of taken top priority? You've got a bear over your shoulder, but elk, mule deer, what else is kind of up there for you?
Let's see. Last year, I finally got my first archery mule deer, and that kind of unlocked a whole new thing, because I'd been trying by myself for a while in Arizona with the over-the-counter archery opportunity there, and doing it by myself and just kind of spotting deer and then locating and then just trying to crawl through these desert washes and losing my bearings and starting over and doing that multiple times and then crawling up and getting busted. And then I went to Utah and had some guys walk me into a deer twice through spotting scopes. And I was like, what a difference it made having help and actually like picking landmarks and figuring out like where you're going to creep into. And then while they're bed down, and I'd always see them be like, all right, they're going to get away. I got to just move fast and make a move and not bed them down. And once we bed them down in the morning, it's like, all right, you crawl up 40 yards downwind of them. And now you're just sitting there till they stand up. And that was like such a game changer and approach for me. Cause it's like, all right, they're comfortable until they're not, until the sun hits them or something. And then you're uncomfortable because you're just sitting there for 6 hours in some crisscross, applesauce position in rocks and cactus or whatever else. And so that was really cool. I really enjoyed that hunt a lot. But I just love going to new places and getting a tag and studying maps and going there and not knowing what it's going to look like and having to problem solve and figure it out and, walk a bunch of miles and just learn and find game sign. And I don't know that I could pick one animal because they're all so different. Like, I get excited about almost hunting anything really, to be honest, but yeah.
Do you ever wish? It's funny hearing you talk about like creeping through the woods because you're a giant. Do you ever wish like, God, well, I wish I wasn't so big. Like, I wish I was honestly, a little smaller.
I've never in my life said that until last year when we talked about a little bit like traditional archery and going down that rabbit hole and trying to, to make that part of my tool. And I've had my recurve for 4 or 5 years maybe, but this just last year, I'm like, all right, it's time to do this thing. And I think it's the first time where I'm like, man, I think hunting would be easier if I were smaller. Like I'm such a big silhouette. Like even in camo, when I'm hanging off a tree out of my saddle or something, I'm just so big. And I'm like, dude, if I were a little guy, like I think that would be a huge advantage because I'm crawling and getting low and hunkering down, and I'm still, however tall. So I'm like,
You're 5'8" when you're crawling. Like that's what sucks.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a PC term, but I was like, dude, I bet I'd be the best hunter in the world if I were a midget. Like I would be. I could really do some damage if I were that little, but that's my cross to carry. So I'll just keep working with what I got.
So I do want to chat about that a little bit. You just got back from Mr. Tom Clum, who's absolutely just legendary. What made you want to go down that path? Like, what made you think to yourself, hunting sucks and it's difficult and it's hard. Let's make it even harder. Like, let's take that next step.
So as far as like hunting goes, I mean, I've been around guys or guides or different ranches, and you kind of just keep your eyes and ears open and pick up something, or, you always see how someone else processes an animal or someone does this or that. And you just take what you like and keep growing and learning. And, for the most part, I've kind of been self-taught or like, go to YouTube University and figure stuff out. And I've been able to do that and do that pretty effectively so far. But I think being in real hunting scenarios this past year with my recurve in opportunities that where if I had my compound, like I would have been walking away with an animal and not tag soup. Right. And then another time these hogs wouldn't stop moving and sent an arrow over the back of a hog. And I was like, man, that was like, it was moving, but I was like, I should have done something with that. And just shooting my recurve enough to be like, all right, like once I get the first shot in and I kind of range the target, like after that, like I'm pretty effective or I can group, but that first shot, I don't know. And so it just kind of got to a point where I was like, man, I've not shot my recurve in so many opportunities because I didn't want to like wound an animal and not treat the animal right. And so it's kind of like, all right, I need some help. Like I've wanted coaching and I just didn't know where to get coaching, especially in like applied to the hunting scenarios and hunting world. And everyone's got something different. Some guys that I respect a lot, gave me books about just instinctual shooting. And he's like, you're a pro athlete. Like, do you aim when you shoot a basketball? No, you just pick up the basketball and you can figure out the range and how much oomph to put behind it. And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so I just kept going with that and kept pulling it back. And I was just really struggling with finding an anchor. And I was like, dude, I just need help. I need help. And I was like, I just kind of kept running my head into the wall. And I was like, no, it's not it. Like kept changing, just had no consistency. And I was like, all right, like I'd heard his name enough times where I'm like, dude, I want to see if he can see me and help me at all. And maybe he can't, but I'm just going to go up there. And what a like world of difference it made.
Yeah.
I mean, just after like a 4-hour session, I was like, dude, I could go to Texas right now. And I would have taken all those shots that I had, like no questions asked. Like I would put them right in the moneymaker, like right at 10 ring it right now. And that was just after 4 hours. And so I mean, long story short, I needed a little help and I wanted to find consistency so that I could take really ethical, effective shots. And I was just kind of slinging arrows. Like I was just slinging arrows. And every time I had a deer kind of walk out at 25 yards, I'm like, dude, that's too far for me. Like I need it to be at 10. Like if it's at 10, I'll get it. Just pulling it back and feeling it and not really having an anchor or pulling back to the same spot every time, or, the length of the arrow on the rest would be different every draw. And I was like, I need some consistency. And it was such a blessing. It was better than I thought it would be for sure.
And that's something that makes me mad, because when you hear that, Because I heard that too when I first made the switch to shooting a recurve. Because I was a basketball player throughout high school, and you hear that same thing. It's just like throwing a baseball. It's just like shooting a basketball. You don't know how far you are. You just shoot it and you make it. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you hear that and you're like, well, it sounds cool in theory. But then when you really take the dive into learning how to shoot a recurve and learning true mechanics behind shooting a recurve, you figure out that you still, even if you're going to be an instinctive shooter, which I don't know if you guys went to gap shooting method or not, but even if you are going to be an instinctive shooter, you still have to have good archery mechanics. And so many people, they overlap the idea of instinctive shooting with slap shooting or just pulling back and letting it rip, which is not how it should be at all. Like, even if I am instinctively shooting, I still need to execute a perfect shot. Like, just because I'm not looking at the tip of my arrow and saying, all right, I'm at 24 yards, I need to be 4 inches under the target. Even if I'm not doing that, I still need to be executing a good shot. And so many people, they just assume instinctive means pull back and let it rip. And once I hit my finger to my face, I let it go. And if I'm on target, I'm on target, which is not the case. It's not the case at all.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest, what was the biggest thing he changed? First off, what did he immediately go, no, we got to fix this. Like, this is not right.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like you said, like I pretty much, I pull back to what I thought was kind of my anchor, which is like, I felt like I was consistently like touching my nose to the fletching. And then as soon as I was right there, I was pretty much in full draw and I'd let it rip. And so I like you said, I just pull it back, get to that spot, and I just would let it rip and kind of be, this big grouping on paper. And he was like, all right, I shot like you for a long time. Like, this is going to really help you. And so we first just worked on like mechanics and like really pulling back through the back of your shoulder blade there and like coming around instead of straight back. And then really finding an anchor that worked for me, which I think was the biggest challenge. And to be fair to like a lot of tall archers, like there really aren't that many, I don't know, at least that I could find, like tall archers that are outspoken on the internet that you can watch or see videos of or help you. And I'd try to like, look at still pictures of all these famous old archers and be like, all right, that's how he is. I'm going to try to get in that position. I just wasn't working for me. And so for me I was like flat as I'm shooting. And as long as my setup is, I had to actually come like an anchor above my cheekbone instead of below it. And then I had to go to my index finger and gap down to there. And that gives me like a point on at 25 yards. And I was trying to go 3 under to my, basically like to my lip. And then even with a gap, like my point on was still out at like 55 yards. Like I was like, it just wasn't working for me. And I was like, how is a point on past 50 yards going to help me at all? And so like changing it to above my cheekbone, which is like still was a solid anchor for me. And then gapping down to my index finger, like I'll still have to play with my tiller a little bit, but that change was like, all right, like that's repeatable. I can come to that every time. And that puts me like right in the 10 ring at 25 yards and so I'm like, all right, like that's perfect. Like I can work with that for sure. Like just having something that I can go back to every time. And now I'm like, okay, now I can, change my fingers a little bit or whatever I need to do from that point. So that was probably my biggest takeaway. It was like, okay, like thank God I found like a home to come to every time. Because before that, it was like, I was just, instinctually using a giant gap in front of the arrow, going 3 under and to my lip, and was like, it's just so far off from what I'm trying to do. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then, I'd have to, we talked about so much, I'd have to look through my notes, but I think anchor and finding like a point on for me were like the two most helpful things.
Well, and it's exactly what you just what you just talked about. Archery becomes so frustrating for people when they don't know how the shot's going to go. Like when they don't know going into the shot, and I'm not even just talking about traditional archery, I'm talking about compounds as well. But when they go into the shot and they don't know, or even a rifle or a crossbow, doesn't matter. But when you go to shoot a weapon and you don't know how that shot's going to break, you don't know how that shot's going to feel, you don't have a thought process to walk through that shooting that weapon becomes very, very frustrating and very, very stressful. And it falls apart quick, man. And I remember my first coaching actually didn't come from Tom. My first coaching came from a guy who had been coached by Tom, but, and just having a shot process, I was like, oh my gosh, like having something to walk through while you're shooting and knowing every step of the shot, it was like mind-blowingly different. And we didn't even have everything correct. Like I left that with still having things wrong. But even just having a process to walk through was like, dude, this is what shooting a weapon is supposed to be. Like for the first time in my life, it was like, okay, this is what shooting a weapon should be like. You should have verbal cues as you walk through your shot to know how it's going to go. And it was just like, man, it was such a relief to finally know how's my shot going to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And we talk about like process a ton in football as well. And like, we kind of had this like little chart adage that they'd always put up on the board of like, you can have a really good process and sometimes have a bad result. And that's no reason to abandon your process. But it's when you have a shitty, bad process and you get a good result, you reinforce that having a bad process is okay. And I feel like that was kind of my first 3 years of recurve shooting was like, all right, I had a bad process, but was athletic enough to just like fudge a good result and put a good grouping together in my garage or out back or something and get this false confidence of like, all right, I can hunt now. I can go out into the woods with this thing. And I think that's what I enjoyed most. Like the more you talked about it, I was like, oh no, like we did set up a full process. Like he showed me exactly where to put my fingers on the bow, like getting my string arm at 90 aligned with the bow and then pulling it up from there and then placing it into my anchor. And so we did go through that whole process where it's like, all right, you practice that process enough and that never changes. And like your hunting scenarios are going to change constantly about the position you're in and animals coming in and how far they are. But like if your shot process is the same, the arrow is going to fly the same. And then you can make those decisions accordingly from there.
And guys, and that's another thing, you know, we're going back to when people say, yeah, but you get to do it for a living. That's another one of my pet peeves is when people are like, yeah, but you got to, you know, you got coaching from Tom Clum. And I'm like, so can you like fly to Denver. That's what I did. But guys, I understand it's not obtainable for everybody to just go to Denver and spend a day with Tom, but Solid Archery Mechanics, which is Tom's online archery class. Oh my gosh. Even, you know, I've, you know, been now 3 different times to spend time with Tom, and I still, I'll just work through his course every once in a while just to refresh my memory, just to stay on top of it. So guys, if you are where Trent was at and you're like, this is just so frustrating. I can't develop a good shot. I can't develop, you know, consistency. I would highly encourage you to go to Solid Archery Mechanics, and it's well worth the price of buying one of his courses and working through that, because you will leave there with a shot process. Like you'll leave that course, even just the online course, you'll leave that online course with having a shot process in place. And it's so good. It's so worth it.
Guys, if you've been around hunting at all, you've probably heard of a little company called Muddy. I have learned that if it says Muddy on it, I can trust it. From tree stands, ground blinds, trail cameras, to all the accessories. If it says Muddy, it's a name I can trust. I love their tree stands. I love their ground blinds. I love their trail cameras, the new Merge and their Morph cellular trail cameras. They're phenomenal, especially when you pair them up with a solar panel and they last forever. Guys, I would encourage you to check out Muddy for all your tree stands, ground blinds, all the accessories, bow hangers, harnesses, everything tree stands or ground blinds or accessories related. If it says muddy, I know that I can trust it. Guys, I know the new Rage. The new Rage is these super light tree stands that cost like $400. And I'm like, well, why would I spend $400 on one when I can spend $100 and get 4 tree stands that are all going to perform? They're all going to be safe. They're all going to be comfortable. Guys, muddy is the gold standard, in my opinion, for what a tree stand and a ground blind and trail cameras should offer you. So, guys, go check them out. They are phenomenal. And I promise you, if you're shopping at a Dick's, Academy, Bass Pro, Cabela's, anywhere, if it says muddy, I promise you it's a name you can trust.
So what will be your first hunt? Like, what do you have your eyes on now? Now that you've left and you're like, got it, what are you going to go hunt with your recurve first?
So I actually have an opportunity for a bull elk in Utah in September, where there should be a healthy number of close encounters. And that was kind of what was like spurred me on, like, all right, it's time to do this thing, because there's no way like I'm going to be able to take my recurve into there unless I'm like very confident and put some effort forward and can, really show that I'm proficient with this thing. And so that's kind of what I have circled in September. And I told Tom that, and he got pretty excited. He's expecting some success pictures now. So that's probably my biggest thing circled for the fall coming up is September elk in Utah.
Jumping straight to the elk with the recurve, huh?
Straight to elk. I mean,
what a man.
Yeah, just going for it. I'll probably try to maybe get back to Texas or something and do hogs, just because they're still such small targets and a little skittish and never stop moving and stuff. But if that, I mean, either way, September's rolling around the corner, so that'll happen. And then we actually in June we're going up to Canada with a group of friends for black bear, and so if I can build a ground blind or something while I'm there, I might take my recurve to that battle as well. But that was for
bears
sure.
Bears were made to be hunted with recurves. Like if somebody were to say, I just got into shooting a recurve, what should I hunt first? I like that you said hogs, because I always tell people, like, if you're just getting into archery hunting, go hunt hogs, man. If you're just making the switch to a recurve, go hunt hogs, because there's so many of them. You can, I blew that one. Don't worry, we'll find another one in 10 minutes. Like, there's just so many of them. They're tough to hunt, tough to shoot. So you're really going to test your equipment out. The hair and the bone and then the hide, it's all tough on pigs. So you're really going to have confidence in your equipment after having hunted pigs. But after that, I tell people bears are built for recurves, just because they don't jump the string. They're bigger. They have big vitals. Really, they're kind of easy to shoot through. Blood trailing them's hard. People I think also cross those lines too. Just because they don't bleed well doesn't mean that the hide's big and tough. Really, you can punch through them pretty easily. So they really offer, you can get in close, because a lot of times they're baited barrels. So you can know your distance. You can know, okay, he's going to be at 15 yards at the barrel. So yeah, man, I would highly encourage you to shoot the bear with the recurve. And you just feel like a man. Like when you shoot a bear with a recurve, you're just like, God, I'm a man. Like, I did it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think my dad'll lose some sleep if I tell him I'm hunting bear with a recurve. For sure, it'll be good for him. I know you've had some.
A guy your size, you don't even need a weapon, dude. Just go out and hunt the bears. Like, just go bear hunt with a stick.
I just need my Malinois with me. I know you've had some other episodes on where you've dived into broadheads quite a bit, but just real quick, do you have any recommendations for a broadhead for taking up to Canada for black bear?
So I love Tom's cutthroats. I shoot cutthroats a lot. However, on the last bear that I shot him with cutthroats, and I immediately learned, especially on bears, like I'm going to have a bleeder blade, because man, bears don't bleed at all. And I made a perfect shot on this bear. Like, I mean, it was an awesome shot. And I'm still looking around. And I'm like, there's no blood anywhere. Arrow was covered in blood, but no blood dropped on the ground at all. Like literally not one drop. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I immediately told myself I got to have a bleeder blade. So I'm going to be shooting day 6 broadheads, which is a double bevel with a bleeder. A lot like an iron will. The reason I'm going with day 6 over iron will is because the bleeder blade is put closer up to the top of the main blades rather than in the back like in an iron will. But yeah, either one's going to work great. Basically, the only reason that I'm going away from the cutthroat for my recurve is because I just need something to disrupt that perfect slit of a cut. Because it's so easy for that to close up. It's so easy for, other meat or fat to clog that hole. I just need something. I did have a whitetail last year too that just didn't bleed well. I could see him where he fell. But just still, I was like, man, there's no blood anywhere. If I didn't see where this deer fell, it'd be difficult. And that's just why, because those single bevels, they make one perfect slit. And it's just so easy for meat or fat to, clog that and stop the deer from bleeding or the bear from bleeding. Of course, bears have all that hair, but, so I'm going to go with something that has a bleeder. I also found I found a single bevel that has a bleeder. They're called Helix. And so I'm anxious to try those. It's a single bevel, and the bleeder blade is a single bevel. So kind of an interesting concept. I haven't shot them yet, but they're called a Helix. I plan on trying those, but I would just say any high quality broadhead that has a bleeder. Like I said, I've kind of fallen in love with the day 6 design, but, just a few episodes back, I did a full broadhead breakdown and we talk about everything. So, that'd definitely be a good episode to listen to. But man, that's encouraging to me that you're like, dude, I'm jumping straight to elk. Like, I've got an elk tag and I'm taking the recurve, because most people are like, yeah, I think I'm still going to take the compound for that, Yeah,
I just, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. If I'm going to fail, I'd rather fail doing something that I want to do and the way I want to do it. And I'm just
there's a lot of truth to that too. Because I told my wife, I had an elk tag last year, and I was really because I'm not 100% traditional. I'm 80%, I would say, and I told my wife, I'm like, I don't know if I want to take the recurve or the compound. It's a lot of money to spend, a lot of time to spend to go and have a bull hang up at 40 yards and you can't shoot it,
Sure.
And so I just didn't know. And I finally told her, I'm like, you know what? The fact that I would rather shoot a cow with my recurve than a bull with my compound, like, that tells me what I should take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
If I'm going to be more excited to shoot a cow with a stick bow than I would be a bull with a compound, why would I not want to take the recurve? You know what I mean? And then the year before last, I passed up 2 different bucks, 2 different deer, because I had my compound. And I'm like, what, if I had my recurve, dude, I would have taken that all day long, because that'd be a good deer with a recurve.
Yeah.
But not with a compound. I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, why not just take the weapon that I'm going to be more proud of the animals I kill with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I don't know. The last year or 2, I've kind of been like half pregnant with it, where there have been days where I even try to take both out to the tree or something. I'm like, that's not it. Like, or what am I to do? All right. It looks like he's coming into, recurve distance. So I'm going to switch real quick. I'm like, I just need to pick. Like, I can't, that's not an effective way to do it. So I think, I don't know. I don't know where I was listening or watching or something. I saw like Aaron Snyder. He was another guy I saw that went to Tom for some coaching, and I guess he said that like he just got rid of every one of his compound bows because he knew he would pick it back up or he'd be tempted to switch over or something. And I was like, man, that's talk about a commitment. Like you just get rid of every other weapon and force yourself to use it and dive into it. And I don't know, I'm going to get rid of my compounds, but I'm like, all right, like if I go to Utah, like I'm going to just set the intentions and put in the work, and feel like the harder the work, the luckier you get. And that was kind of always my motto, plan, just working hard, and everything just kind of comes together when all that work meets opportunity. So I think that's just going to be my approach.
I was in that same spot too, just like kind of half in, half out, what I want to hunt with, what I not want to hunt with. And again, I didn't go full bore. And I didn't for the reason, I wanted to learn how to shoot a recurve so that I could be a more well-rounded archer, so that I could be a more well-rounded sportsman and outdoorsman, not so that I could become one-sided. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to become traditional only. I wanted to do it so that I could be more well-rounded, more versed, more, just have different weapons, have different choices. So I never wanted to go full bore 100% shooting a recurve. But even when I started to try to shoot a recurve, I was always still like, I'm shooting bad, I'm going to grab the compound, or I missed a deer with the recurve, I'm going to get the compound. And
Right.
I remember telling Fred Eichler that, who's just, one of the best recurve hunters to ever live. And he said, listen, if you take a compound, you'll never shoot one with your recurve. And I'm like, well, duh. But then I really started thinking about that. And I'm like, there's a lot of truth to that. If I keep going back to this, if I keep falling back on the crutch of a compound, I'll never do it with a recurve. And the same is true. Like if you're making this switch from a rifle to a compound and you have a deer hanging, if you take your compound for the first day and you've got a deer hang up at 100 and you're like, screw this, dude, I'm going back to the rifle. You're never going to do it with a compound. And the same is true when you're making that, when you're trying to learn how to shoot a recurve. If you've got a deer hang up at 30 and you're like, dude, screw this. If I'd have had my compound, I'd have already killed it. So the next day you go back to a compound, you'll never finish with a recurve. Like you'll never get it done with a recurve. There has to be that point where you just say, you know what? I'm going to hunt with this until I kill one. I'm going to do this until I punch that tag. Now, if you want to be just back and forth all the time, and that's fine too. But there was that point in my journey where I just said, you know what? I want to kill a deer with this recurve. So I've got to go out and hunt with it. I got to quit going back to the compound just when things get hard. I've got to make the switch, for now until I kill this deer or whatever. Because what Fred said is right, man. If you have a compound, you'll never shoot them with a recurve. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, and that's kind of a lot of my motivation too, is just like to continue growing and learning my like woodsmanship. And kind of like you said, like if you're able to get close to deer with your compound and, be at 30 and 40 yards and no problem, and they're hanging up, you're not close enough. Like you got to just find a way to get closer and keep learning about them. And so,
well, I'll tell you what made me make this, what made me say, I need to shoot a recurve. Having the pleasure of working for Pope and Young, you get to talk to all these guys that kill the biggest and baddest animals of the species, world records, top fives. And you hear these stories and, this is a world record we're talking about. And dudes are like, I shot him at 7 yards. And I'm like, what? Like 7 yards? And then you hear and like, yeah, dude, I shot him at 4 yards. Dude, I shot him from 7 yards, 18 yards. I shot him from... And then you start looking into it. Average shot distance on any Pope and Young animal, 17 to 24 yards. And I just started thinking, I'm like, that's really doable with a recurve. Like, so if you take the top animals in the world killed with archery equipment and they're all killed within recurve distance, not all, but the average being killed in recurve distance, why don't I learn how to shoot one of these? Like, why don't I make the switch and learn how to get efficient with this? And so that was kind of where my mindset lived, was like, and then I started thinking back through the years. I'm like, I've never shot. I mean, the furthest deer I've ever shot was 31. Average is 20. Average is probably 18 even. And I'm like, okay, if I'm shooting deer every year at 18 yards with the compound, why not just do that with a recurve? Like,
for sure.
And so that's what I did. And man, you learn like, yeah, you have to wait a little bit longer for them to get in, but I'm just becoming a better hunter by doing so.
Yeah, no, I love that intimacy of it and being close and being in situations. I mean, seems like the last year or two, I've been in more situations where I end up just watching an animal and being close to them and taking videos of them and not even pulling my bow back. Because I'm like, man, this is just such a cool experience. Like just being in here with them and seeing them totally comfortable and just, doing their thing. And I think, I don't know, you don't meet too many asshole traditional bow hunters. I feel like everyone in the training community, they're like so respectful of animals and so mindful. And I almost compare them to like, black belts in jujitsu. Like these guys are like kicking your butt while teaching you these life lessons and stuff. And I feel like guys that have shot trad their whole life, they're just like almost like a spiritual, very mindful kind of, elder in the community or something. And it's like, there's something to that. Like there's something to be unraveled there about these guys and their personalities and the choices they make and how they live their life and how they respect the woods and their woodsmanship and their knowledge and all that. So it's like, yeah, why not want to be more like those guys?
And dude, like it's something that's so hard to explain to people. I just feel better when I'm walking through the woods with a recurve as opposed to a compound or a rifle by far for that matter. But like you almost feel spiritual. Like you said, you almost feel like this is who I am. Like this is part of my heritage. This is part of like, I don't know, man. You just feel like more of a woodsman. You feel like you're doing it the right way almost. And I remember the first time, like I was walking to a tree stand with a recurve and I'm like, dude, this just feels right. Like you get that tingle, and you're just like, this is it, dude. Like, and then you go back to a compound and you're walking to the woods. You're like, I feel like I'm cheating. Like, I feel like I don't know. And so I just tell everybody, man, like if you've never hunted with a recurve, and I'm not telling you got to switch 100% because I don't even switch 100%. But dude, you got to try it. Like you have to experience what it's like to just have a stick and a string in your hand and go out and try to kill something. Like it's unreal, man. Yeah. It really is just it's a better feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love like going back in time and trying to walk through someone else's shoes and just think about, people that used to live off the land and walk through the woods with a stick bow. And it's like, man, we're not eating until we get something. Or we were just shed hunting in Arizona and found a matching set of elk sheds over this canyon. And right after we had found those, we found like a couple arrowheads and was like, dude, like this makes sense. Like these guys, natives were here making arrows and this is right where the wildlife is hanging out to still, like to this day. And just such a kind of a cool feeling, like you said.
Not only were they walking through the woods with stick bows, they were walking through the woods with self bows. They had to chop down a tree and make a bow. And then they had to carve out some arrows and out of some wood and put a sharp rock on them and then try to kill an animal. Like you get into some Clay Hayes type stuff now, dude. And I can't, that's a different ball game, dude.
I got a little ways to go before I get down that rabbit hole, but I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, Trent, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, dude. It's been an absolute pleasure. I usually the only athletes I have on are Razorbacks, because I'm a Razorback fan. But I'm like, you know what? He never played against Arkansas. Like it'd be different if you were like a Bama dude or a Georgia guy. But no, I thought I got to have him on, man. Really, when I saw the picture, when I saw you have a deer in the Bills stadium, I was like, yeah, seems like a legit dude. How did you even get that pass? Like, how did you even get that in?
I was one of those ask for forgiveness and not permission sort of things for sure. But it was during COVID. It was during COVID, so it would have been a tough ask, but it was my birthday, December 22nd, and I shot this buck and we had just clinched the division. So, I mean, you could do no wrong in the city pretty much. And so I was like, dude, you know what? Like, it's going to be my last year playing football. Like, I love the outdoors. I love football. Like, why don't I just put them two together in a picture, and like, it just summarizes everything I want people to know. And so I just threw the deer in the back of my truck and drove down to the stadium, back down the ramp, and dragged the deer onto the turf and set it up. I had my wife with me, and we must have taken 400 pictures because she'd never photographed a deer before. I was like, just make it look good and make it look big. And she was like, thought I meant to make the body look big. So I just had these like contorted pictures of deer butt, basically, with us in the background. And we almost called off the marriage after that. But no, it was just cool. I was like, man, that was just a cool way to.
And nobody
to
said
honor the
nothing.
deer.
Like, nobody stopped you. Nobody said, dude, you have a dead animal in the stadium.
No, I think they didn't know really what to think. They were just like, once I dragged it out of the truck and onto the turf, it was already there at this point. So I don't think it was what it was. And then
now there's a
when it,
lot of
got
stadiums.
received-
Like, there's a lot of teams in a lot of cities that I would be like, yeah, they probably wouldn't care. Like, you know, but really I'm like, man, Buffalo, New York, like, surprising me, you know?
Yeah. There's a big outdoors community. I think if we were on the other side of New York, I probably would have got hit with a couple fines or something. But I think the community was like what really sold it to like everyone be like, all right, that was okay, because they were just so jacked up about it. And like, I mean, you can go into Buffalo and now there's just like bars with that picture up on the wall and like all over, and people they just ate it up. They're like, dude, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, no one's ever brought a deer into the stadium and taken a picture with it. And so I think I set the bar high for a little while of celebrating your field harvest. And
That's cool, man.
It was cool. It opened up a lot of doors.
Did you get any blood on the
It's a good
turf?
conversation.
Like, was there not a drag line, like where you dragged the bloody deer across the turf?
Fortunately, it was like snowing the day before, so I was able to get all the blood out of the cavity. But what did happen, thank God I pulled out the inner loins already, because when I dragged the deer onto the turf, all the turf pellets just like went everywhere.
It went inside
of the deer. Yeah. And so it was like, you look inside and it looked like it had some infection or something, but it was just black turf pellets all over.
That's funny.
But
no, I remember one time I sent, I had a guy that played professional baseball, and he had one of my shirts, and he was shooting before a game in the stadium on the field. And I think it was for the Rangers, and he was shooting on the Rangers, like from home plate. Like, and I'm like, dude, take my shirt off if you're going to shoot in a stadium and get in trouble and get fined and stuff. Like, wear somebody else's shirt, bro. Like,
right.
You're about to get in trouble, and you chose to put on my shirt. And, but he posted them all over the internet, and same deal. It was like, dude, this is dope. Like, this is so cool. Is there a bigger audience inside? And I tried to close it up, but now I got more questions. Is there a bigger audience in the NFL that are hunters than people would, really truly think?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I think they probably go hand in hand, at least in Buffalo, at least, like all the people that are getting out in the woods and are even like, not even just hunters, but like big fishermen and stuff. They're all NFL fans. I mean, the NFL brand is so powerful and wide. I think it opens up probably a lot of doors in the outdoors industry. I think they go hand in hand. That was probably the only, not that I was like ever a look at me guy, but I was like, man, like I would have thought like the NFL would have been such a good opportunity to like market people's brands and what they're doing with their company, or such a good platform to talk about what guys are doing in the outdoors community from that standpoint, that I was like, man, I wish I would have used that brand to my advantage a little bit more, and helped out these companies that I believe in, or talk about conservation or help, whatever I could do to help. It was just, it's such a powerful brand, and you have so much reach with so many people that I feel like there's probably still is opportunity there, because there are some guys that that are hunters that are in the NFL. They're not a ton of guys on every team, but there's definitely guys on every team that are like, oh yeah, I grew up hunting, I hunt. Like I'd do that. I'd wear that shirt, or I'd talk about it in an interview or something. Like it's no big deal, and just kind of keep bringing awareness to whatever would help the hunting community.
Well, and that's why I asked that, because it seems like in baseball, in the MLB, there's a lot more of that. Like there's a lot more open talk about hunters and open talk about this is what I do off the field. And I don't know, maybe it's because of like Major League Bowhunter and, you know, that tone that they've set for like, hey, we're professional baseball players and hunters. And I don't know. That's kind of why I ask, because you start seeing a lot more dudes. And of course, when you retire, you get a lot more time. But, you know, you start seeing a lot of guys really be more outspoken about hunting once they leave the NFL. And it's like, okay, so why wasn't that outspokenness and representation given while you were in the NFL? And it, you know, it goes back exactly what you just said. But so I was just curious, like if there's more hunters than we would actually, you know, truly think about.
There definitely are. To be honest, they're usually on offensive line for whatever reason, but I think the reason probably that is, if I had to pinpoint it, was
they like to eat the most. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they're all from Iowa, but the NFL is like real taboo about guns. Like you can't ever have any like marketing for firearms or alcohol. But then like if you look at the Super Bowl, like their number one sales is alcohol, and they have snipers in every tower overhead, like watching the game. So
yeah.
It's not that they don't use it, but they don't support it, or they don't support players supporting it. And so I feel like that probably points the finger to like, all right, if you want NFL guys to be outspoken or help the hunting industry, like it probably needs to be like through the avenue of archery, because they'd have no problem with archery. But it's like anytime they, you know, think they're the government and want to get involved and, you know, put a brake on firearms and supporting that, then it's like, all right, don't talk about that. But I don't think.
Well, I just really like people that represent hunting that have a reach outside of hunting. And, you know, you talk about, I mean, Joe Rogan is outstanding, but, you know, guys that have a reach in the NFL or baseball or music or whatever that talk about hunting is always just so encouraging to me, especially ones that reach a different, diverse crowd. Like, I don't know if you know who Traylon Burks is, but, you know, he was from Arkansas, and I remember watching a Razorback game, and here's this giant black guy that, you know, you would never think about. That guy's a hunter. And it cuts to him like before the game, and he's talking about hunting, and he's talking about shooting whitetails and killing pigs with a knife. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, this dude's legit, like a hunter. Yeah. And, you know, now he's in the NFL and doing really well in the NFL. And I'm like, and then you just see the talk stop, like on his social media, you know, whereas used to during the Arkansas games, they would talk about, this guy's been chasing down pigs this weekend with a knife. And, you know, they used to talk about that stuff during the games. Now it's just stopped. And I'm like, but man, why? Like, you should continue to use this avenue to push hunting and to help the community. And so that's why I asked, because I was just curious, because it seems like it's just a lot more open in baseball. And I don't know. Yeah. You know, maybe it is because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. We've been playing with the idea for a while about like starting a YouTube or something and trying to find a good message or some kind of philanthropy involved, or taking kids out and exposing them to it. But like, or even like veterans and pulling basically like, all right, let's say you have like a vet that's struggling, take them out hunting and trying to help them out, give them some connections or tools to help them transition. But he's got this favorite NFL team. Let's say it's, you know, whatever, the Commanders or Falcons or Giants. Like, all right, well, it's such a small world in the NFL. I know somebody on every team. It's like, all right, I'm going to find an outdoorsman or even a non-outdoorsman and introduce them to hunting and they get to go hang out with this vet that likes to hunt. His favorite team is the Giants, and we're going to connect these two guys and get them outdoors and show people, the magic that can happen out there. And I think that'd be a cool way to reach the football network in a different community. That's kind of not a different community, but just a different way of reaching them. But I've just kind of been dragging my feet about it, trying to find the right way to do it and all the producing and stuff that would go into it. But I think there'd be a lot of opportunity for exposure there. And, you take a guy like Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs or, someone like that out. That's like such a great personality that everyone love in the NFL, and that are great guys too. And take them out in the off season. And I think that would be a cool way to reach more people for sure. But just making sure that, what's the message that they need to be reached with, or are you just connecting to people and letting the magic happen or what have you?
Yeah.
So if you have any advice or want to be involved in something like that at all.
For sure, man. And I think, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of really cool things you could do because, football really is one of those sports that once you retire, once you're done, it's like, okay, I've given my entire life to this. Like, what now? Like, a lot of dudes when they quit a professional sport, they lose their identity because that's been my whole life. Like, that's what, since I could play, I've been playing, and that's all my life has been focused on. And so I think it'd be really cool to give something to professional athletes afterwards. Hey, let's teach you how to do this. And, maybe killing and eating isn't your thing. Maybe you don't want to go take the life from something, but fly fishing or hiking, camping, whatever. Like, let's just give you some sort of outlet. Or injured athletes. That's another thing that people don't, and you found this lifestyle through, I don't want to say travesty, but you know what I mean? But like I talked with Corey Anderson, who's a UFC fighter, actually fighting today for a light heavyweight championship. So good luck, Corey. But he found hunting through that. He's like, dude, I got the brakes beat off of me and I wasn't allowed to fight or be in the gym for 2 months. And I didn't know what to do. Like, that's all I did. That's all I lived for. That's all I went to the woods. And he's like, you start sitting there and you start seeing deer and it's like, man, I haven't thought about that fight one time. Like, I haven't thought about training one time. And I needed that. Like, I needed that escape. So I think there's a lot of cool ways, man, and a lot of cool things to do and be done. And that's something that I'm passionate about, is of helping create opportunities for people to experience the outdoors in a way that most people don't get to. A couple different times I had musicians come in, through like on tour, and I'm like, hey, it's hunting season. Like, let's go out and hunt. And just them being able to say, like, dude, I've been on a tour bus for 4 months. I needed this so bad. Like, just to get off the tour bus and go shoot something. Like, I needed that. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities, man. And there's a lot of really cool things to be done. So, absolutely.
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. Just like, I almost feel sorry for people that will never, walk out 10 miles into Idaho's wilderness and camp out on this knoll and stumble across a moose shed and see the stars and, be able to watch wildlife and drink from a fresh mountain spring. And I'm like, if you think life is bad or, you're going through it or you're having all these mental health issues, like, dude, just go walk through the wilderness and drink from a spring, like, get some perspective and, see what real life is all about. And I think more people would benefit from that than they even know.
My
That's,
gosh, yes. Dude, I can't even begin to tell, like, and we're not even talking about adults, but kids even, man, like, kids live their life. I don't know if you've got kids, but kids live their lives on a freaking tablet or a phone with their face shoved into it. And they're so just lethargic and boring. And kids have no personality these days. And it's amazing to me when my friends or when my kids have friends come over, and my son will be like, "You want to go out and shoot bows?" My son's 5, and they're like, "What?" And my son's like, "Yeah, let's go shoot arrows." And he's shooting arrows every which direction and riding a dirt bike around. And, he'll tell stories about finding sheds, or, he'll take them down to the basement and say, "I was with my dad when he shot that buck." And these other kids are just like, I like to play Fortnite. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, come on, you're missing it, dude. And like kids, man, not even kids, college athletes, college students, even, that live their life stuck in a dorm room. And I'm like, there's so much more to this life. Like, if we could just get you out and let you experience what it's like, it'd change your life.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's all everybody needs, for sure.
So, well, Trent, man, I greatly appreciate it. And it's been a real pleasure. Hopefully one day we get to share camp together and cook some nilgai backstraps over an open fire or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to it.
Guys, there's one fabric that if you're not wearing, you absolutely should be. It's a magic fabric. It changes everything about the way you layer, everything about the way you dress, everything about the way you hunt, and that is merino wool. I couldn't even begin to tell you all of the benefits of merino wool, and I'm going to miss some for sure. But guys, whether it's summer or whether it's winter, this is going to keep you cool in the summer. It's moisture wicking. It's going to pull the moisture away from your body, but it's also going to hold your heat in the winter. It is antimicrobial. It doesn't smell. It doesn't hold scent like other fabrics does. So if you're out on a 5-day hunt, you don't have access to a washer, this is not going to hold your scent. It's not going to get stinky and nasty. It's also quick drying. You can hang this up in your tent. You can hang it up on a clothesline. It's going to dry really quick. But the coolest part about merino, in my opinion, is that when it gets wet, it still maintains its warmth properties. So if there's a light rain or a snow and this gets wet, it's still going to keep me warm. There's no itch. It's non-allergenic. It's an amazing fabric. Minus 33. I stumbled upon minus 33 by accident. I was on backcountry.com and they were having a blowout sale. I needed some new merino for a hunt that was coming up. And so I dove in, I bought it. And when I got it, it was the softest, best merino I have ever felt in my entire life. I've not worn anything but minus 33 socks for everyday life, whether I'm hunting, hiking, or just, out for the day. I haven't worn anything but minus 33 socks in over a year and a half. Every single day I'm wearing their underwear. Every single time I'm out hunting, whether it's 100 or whether it's 5, I'm wearing some sort of beanie to cover up my chrome dome and to keep that covered up and warm or cool, if it's in the summer. But also that UV protectant. I like to wear it in the summer. Guys, minus 33 does merino, in my opinion, better than anybody else does it. Go check out minus 33 for all your merino wool. And if you haven't ever tried merino, guys, you are missing out. It will change the way you layer. It will change the way you hunt. Go check out merino wool and go check out minus 33.
Guys, thanks for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.